At the engagement banquet, Rose fled from her wedding. After learning that her family had gone bankrupt, her malicious fiancé David drugged her and sent her to an old man's bed. Desperate, Rose jumped into Jack's car and begged for help. Jack grabbed her chin, but the dazed Rose kissed him passionately, causing his reason to crumble as the two became entangled in the car, the atmosphere growing increasingly intense. Afterward, Rose stuffed a wad of cash into Jack's hand as payment, completely unaware that Jack was David's uncle. Furious over Rose's escape, David angrily announced the annulment of their engagement. But Rose returned to the banquet, publicly exposing his schemes. Enraged, David accused her of sleeping with an old man, turning the crowd against her. Little did they know the old man was actually Jack. Upon seeing his uncle, David immediately fell to his knees in apology. Jack carried Rose out of the banquet hall, teasing her for having the guts to return after being drugged. Rose quipped that her courage wasn't the only thing big about her, leaving Jack helplessly amused. When their mutual friend Steve arrived with a coat for Rose, the gesture made Jack misunderstand their relationship, and he drove off coldly. David, seething, called Rose to warn her that Jack had an irreplaceable first love and would eventually dump her. Rose didn't care. Her only goal was to spite David. Besides, she also had her own white moonlight, her blind childhood sweetheart. Using a video of David and her best friend Amy's affair as leverage, she blackmailed him for a hefty sum, desperately needed to pay off her family's 900 million yuan debt. At a bar, Jack encountered Rose again. One of his friends, smitten with her, was terrified when Jack declared Rose was his woman. Rose begged a creditor for an extension on her debt, but the man tried to take advantage of her by forcing her to drink. Pretending her boyfriend was coming to pick her up, she stumbled toward Jack, clinging to him and whining, "Uncle, I'm drunk. Can you take me home?" Reluctantly, Jack helped her, holding her close as he quipped about how bold she had been while drinking earlier. In the car, Jack pressed Rose on why she approached him, but she pulled on his tie and provocatively said she wanted to sleep with him. Jack brought her to his home, where Rose finally confessed that she didn't want to sleep with him but wanted to collaborate with his company. Jack, believing she was using him to get revenge on David, coldly kicked her out. Furious, Rose accused Jack of being heartless. Steve, worried for her, offered to pay her debt, but Rose refused. She was determined to rely on herself. The next day, Jack discovered Rose chatting happily with his mother. He warned her not to try manipulating his mom, but Rose once again requested a partnership. Jack agreed on the condition that she accompany him to a pool party and prove herself there. Rose readily agreed, but when she saw the conservative swimsuit Jack had prepared for her, something only an old lady would wear, she wrapped herself in a jacket instead. At the party, socialites mocked Rose for her family's bankruptcy and pushed her into the pool. Soaked through, her stunning figure was revealed, drawing the attention of wealthy young men, who were quickly warned off by Jack. When one of the women who had bullied Rose fell into the pool herself, Jack dove in, only to realize it wasn't Rose. Disgusted, he tossed the woman back into the water. Rose, watching the commotion from the sidelines, laughed. Jack draped a towel over her shoulders, and she playfully called him boyfriend, demanding he carry her. Jack reluctantly complied, much to her satisfaction. Jack's friends showed concern for her, but Jack warned them not to stare and advised Rose not to get into fights again. Rose confidently claimed she wasn't a delicate woman and proudly boasted about her battle achievements. However, Jack gently applied ointment to her wounds, and his attentiveness touched Rose's heart. When her best friend asked about Jack's abilities in bed, Rose shyly praised him, only to have Jack overhear. He teased her, saying she wasn't bad either, while her friend excitedly shipped them as a couple. Jack agreed to collaborate with Rose but required her to pose as his girlfriend to appease his mother's pressure to marry. Rose readily agreed. The next day, Rose presented her proposal to Jack. While he was impressed, he mischievously told her it hadn't passed. Frustrated, Rose repeatedly revised the proposal, only to have Jack reject it again. Finally, she stopped his car in a fit of anger. Amused by her fiery demeanor, Jack wrapped an arm around her waist and teased, "Your proposal is excellent, but you haven't treated me well." When he provocatively grabbed her waist, Rose pushed him down and seductively taunted him before walking away, leaving him dumbfounded. When Steve came to see Rose, Jack intercepted them. Jealous, he sarcastically remarked on her many boyfriends, and demanded she move into his house. Visiting her jailed father, Rose avoided telling him that her mother had committed suicide, instead forcing a smile and claiming life was good. Later, drowning her sorrows over her mother's death, Rose got drunk. When Jack arrived, she clung to him, nuzzling his scent. Jack carried her to his car, but as he tried to steady her, she accidentally kissed him. The moment heated up, only for Rose to suddenly vomit on him. Disgusted, Jack threw her into a bathtub. When she anxiously grabbed his shirt, the two ended up kissing again. The next day, Amy posted photos of Rose's deceased mother online. Enraged, Rose smashed a beer bottle over her head. Amy's companions tried to retaliate, but Rose fought them off. When Jack arrived, Rose sheepishly smiled. He escorted her to a private room, where a jealous woman confronted him, demanding he leave Rose. Ignoring her, Jack knelt to tend to Rose's injuries, and her usually tough exterior softened as tears welled up in her eyes. Jack offered his hand, carrying her home on his back. To hasten their grandchild plan, Jack's mother arranged for them to share a room. That night, a scented candle left Rose feverish. She clung to Jack, rubbing against him. When her restless legs kicked out, Jack tucked them under the covers, only for Rose to latch onto him again. Realizing the scent was to blame, Jack tied her hands with his tie and called a doctor. The next day, Rose discovered Amy visiting her father in prison. Amy spread rumors about Rose seducing her uncle, leading her father to slap her in anger. Rose endured it silently, unwilling to let her father know how tough her life had become. Jack, driving her home, noticed the redness on her face and carefully treated it. His playful remark about buying enough medicine to open a pharmacy made Rose laugh. The exhausted Rose fell into a deep sleep on Jack's bed, and Jack happily lay down beside her. The next morning, Rose woke up and felt a bit embarrassed to find them sharing the same bed. However, Jack wrapped his arm around her waist and warned her not to sleep in another man's bed so casually again. By chance, Jack noticed a birthmark on Rose's leg, which shocked him. Unable to resist, he grabbed her ankle because the birthmark was identical to that of his first love. Jack began investigating Rose's past, secretly hoping she was his first love, as he had gradually become attracted to her confidence and charm. However, when he saw Rose behaving intimately with Steve, he mistakenly thought Steve was the man she loved. Jealous, he mocked Rose for having poor taste in men, which made Rose angry, and she pushed him away. When the investigation confirmed that Rose was indeed his first love, Jack felt both joy and nervousness. When Rose was changing, Jack appeared behind her, zipping up her dress and pulling down her shoulder strap to reveal a familiar birthmark on her chest. Overwhelmed, he lifted her onto the sink and traced another birthmark on her thigh. She was the girl he had been searching for all along, though she seemed not to recognize him. Jack hesitated to ask why she had left him years ago, afraid of her answer. But when Rose cornered him against the wall, he demanded to know if she treated other men this way. Rose denied it, and Jack carried her back to the room. He recounted his childhood. As a blind boy on the verge of suicide, a girl saved him, becoming his light. But when he confessed his feelings, she suddenly disappeared. He asked Rose if the girl had left because she hated him. Shocked, Rose realized Jack was her white moonlight, and frantically explained that her family's bankruptcy and her mother's suicide had forced her to leave. Discovering they had always been each other's first love, Jack kissed her forehead tenderly, and the story ended.